So welcome to episode 31 of Level Up, 60 minutes of live Q&A where your questions and votes really do drive the show. The Slido link in the chat allows you to vote up the questions that you would most like answered by the panel. And of course, you can add your own in real time as well, which we'd really welcome you to do. In this episode, we're going to be exploring leadership. Now, what does actually make a great leader? How you become one, and in particular, how do you manage to lead within an agile environment when there are so many moving parts going on around you? So let's jump straight in. We'll meet our panel, all of whom are regular and experienced contributors to the world of online panels and discussions and new media and so on. So delighted to welcome Johann Botha back. He's the CEO at getITright, who specialise in building digital age capability in other organisations. So welcome, Johann. Great to see you.
Thank you, Nick. Glad to be here and contribute.
Thank you very much indeed. Priyank Pathak is the founder and the CEO of Innovation Roots, a leading lean agile transformation organisation. Priyank is also the founder of the Agile Network in India. So welcome to Level Up, Priyank. It's great to have you on the panel.
Thank you for having me here, Nick. Great to be here.
Excellent, thank you. Another regular contributor that we welcome back is Etienne Shardlow. He's a senior consultant at Symphonise Consulting, and he's leading and advising clients on transformation and the adoption of new and emerging technologies all the time. So Etienne, welcome back.
Good to be back. Thank you.
Patrick von Schlag is the president of the Deep Creek Center over in the US and brings 30 years of experience to the panel, as well as hosting the Making IT Work video log, the vlog on YouTube. So do look him up there on his channel as well. Welcome back, Patrick.
Thank you, Nick. It's wonderful to be back.
Okay, excellent. Joining us for the first time today on the panel is Nandhakumar Swaminathan, who is a highly qualified management professional and self-confessed lifelong learner with one of the most comprehensive, I have to say, professional records of attainment on credly.com that I've seen. So welcome, Nandhakumar. Great to have you with us.
Hello all, Nandhakumar Swaminathan signing in. Thanks a lot, Nick. Looking forward to a great hour of discussions and learning.
Hey, excellent. Thank you very much. Now then, if you're watching us online and you feel that you could answer some of the questions, then please just volunteer in the chat, okay? And we'll be in touch to bring you in, and we'll welcome you onto one of our future panels. Completing our team today is our question master, who is Charlotte, and she is joining us from the Thames Valley here in the UK. So Charlotte, may we have our first question, please?
You certainly can. Hello, everybody. First question today is from Jeffrey in Amsterdam, Netherlands. How do I effectively provide inspiration to my team? As a leader, I find it hard to keep the team motivated.
Okay, and Nandhakumar, go ahead.
Okay, in my opinion, I would like to focus on two things. The first one is lead by example, and the second one is we followed up with walk the talk approach. Action speaks louder than words, and it's pretty much evident that if you kind of follow these two, at least that's what been my experience in my career, it really provides continued effective inspiration to the team. That's the first thought that comes to my mind at this point of Nick.
Yeah, and it's a great piece of advice. You know, just lead from the front, do it the way that you want to do it. Absolutely spot on. Patrick, and then Priyank.
So, yeah, it's a very important question. And one of the answers, I guess, begins with giving your team clear vision about where they're going and why. How exactly is the work that they're working on contributing to real benefits, real results for their stakeholders? And how do they participate in creating those results? And then I think Nandhakumar's guidance is actually very spot on here. Then lead by example, lead by showing your commitment to get your hands dirty in helping your team to achieve its goals and making sure that they have the tools that they need to be successful.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Really interesting. And Priyank?
In addition to what Patrick and Nanda said, just tweaking the words, which Patrick said, purpose being one of the biggest influence on people. Vision is one of the construct to explain that idea. I personally appreciate if I am getting inspiration from somebody, the first thing I go for is what is the value? So inspiration to me is value driven. I see the value, which is influenced by the purpose behind the organization or the project. That helps me a lot. So that's my, I would say, instrument. Thank you.
That's such a powerful word. Thank you, Priyank. Yeah, such a powerful word, purpose. We might come back to talking a little bit more about purpose, in the next few minutes. But a great start. Thank you very much indeed. What an insightful question to begin our discussion today. Thank you. Charlotte, let's move on. We'll take the next question, please.
Question from Sean, Seattle, USA. How do I stop a tendency to micromanage my team? I'm finding it difficult to delegate.
Okay, all right. This is a real challenge, isn't it? Etienne, start us off, then we'll go to Nandhakumar.
I think the first thing is don't stop micromanaging cold turkey. Take it slowly, because the team is so used to you micromanaging that stopping, they're going to feel lost and they're going to feel out of their depth. So to avoid that, go slowly. And my advice to managers who want to stop micromanaging is start writing your instructions down and then looking for places where you are giving direct instructions rather than setting kind of general tasks, and then remove some of the detail before sending your instructions out. And you'll find that that is a habit that you will start to develop in your spoken instructions too.
That's a really good technique for weaning you off that behavior, Nandhakumar.
Building on to what was earlier said, in my opinion, the key is, this is a situation that's pretty much faced with everybody. So the key is to start working on building trust with the people whom we find it difficult to delegate. And in my opinion, empathy could help a lot, which is one of the key factors in developing. And also, I feel that it should be a more step approach where there is delegation for pieces of deliverables or tasks, along with check-ins and feedback at comfortable intervals. And as time progresses, trust builds. There can be complete delegation of the entire deliverable in that task. I think this is what, in my opinion, is one of the key factors to look at.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Patrick?
A lot of times people find themselves micromanaging because they lack visibility into what the teams are working on and where and how progress is maintaining, or that the teams may lack knowledge or skills that they require. And so one of the first things I would suggest for anyone who's tending to micromanage is to ask the question, do you believe your people have the knowledge, skills, tools, resources they need to do this work successfully on their own? If not, part of the job then becomes, how do I provide them those tools and resources that they require? And then how do I step back in a way where I have the visibility I need and I can demonstrate the trust and support for my team to carry out and self-organize and produce their own results?
Okay, thank you very much. And Johann?
Yeah, I was laughing, not at the question being asked. I was laughing because that was one of the most difficult things for me to actually get right. And I can just echo everything that's been said so far. You need to have a high trust environment. People need to trust you, not to overreact or to try and take work back if they don't do it right or up to standard or whatever. Your job becomes then to enable them, to help them, and to lead them. Think about leading a child. You take them by the hand and you walk down the street. Leadership is about being one step in front, but allowing people to make mistakes. It's hard.
I think you're right. I think for me, the leaders need to be more comfortable with a high degree of uncertainty. okay, in outcome, because you need to be able to kind of set that direction, help people to succeed, enable them to succeed, support them to succeed, but actually allow them to grow and develop. Because if you're micromanaging, you're not necessarily leading at that point, you're managing. And I would argue that those two things, whilst related, they're different, okay? And so we're talking about, kind of thinking about leadership, then you know that there's something not quite right if you're having to be right down in the weeds on certain tasks. You really need to think about that a little bit, and it may well come from your own behavior. I think we've all struggled with that. So not just you, Johann. I think everybody that starts off as an individual contributor and, then goes through the team leader and the middle management phase, and then the, founder and the, C-suite type work, faces this on a day-to-day basis, because your experience that's built your career to this point is not always replicated in the others around you. So I completely get that. So thank you very much, panel. Some great insight and another fantastic question. Charlotte, let's move on now.
We've got a question from Nick in Wokingham, UK. Does the panel have a favourite book on leadership they could recommend that I add to my Christmas list?
Yeah, now this is a personal one here. So I'm looking for some good reading over the holiday period. Nandhakumar, go ahead, and then Priyank next.
Okay, so actually I had 4 that comes to my mind. The first 2 are 7 Habits by Highly Effective People and the 8 Habits by Stephen Covey. And the remaining 2 are Who Moved My Cheese and Fish. I think these are the 4 that would kind of really help on honing the leadership skills.
Okay, thank you very much, Priyank, and then Johann.
So just to prove a point that I'm from India, I'm going to recommend you an Indian book, not from the list of which is quite popular. So try this book, buying it on maybe some portal called Lectures of Bhagavad Gita by Swami Vivekananda, and there are plenty of good stuff in that. So one of the quotation is like it tells about a scenario and where Krishna is been one of the key characters of the story. He is basically preaching from mid of the field, right? So leaders have to always teach from mid of the field. They're not like sitting in a cabin or maybe in a different premises, and most of the time they have to lead from front and maybe from the center sometimes, right? So that's my favorite quotation, and that's my favorite book.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, for the folks who are watching, what we're going to do with these recommendations, we're going to pick them up, okay, and we'll put them into the comments in the chat for you on the recorded version, so you can look them up as well. If you forget, like me, so I'm kind of using the recording as my aid memoir for this. Johann, what would you recommend?
Okay, if you haven't bought the workbook, Find Your Why, do so. So that's the sort of follow-up to, start with why. I also like 7 Habits. I listen to it once a year at least. Now that I've got Audible, I don't have to read it. And then there's another Simon Sinek book that I highly recommend, and that's The Infinite Organization. Then you can obviously read Competing in a Digital Future, if I may self-promote a bit.
Okay, thank you very much. Last thoughts on this then, Etienne. What would you add into my Christmas stocking?
Well, Johann and I share a passion for Start With Why. So, thanks, Johann, for stealing that. But there's another book that I like by Catherine Joyce called Being an Agile Leader Manager. It's not really so much about agile and flexible leadership, but really got some really, really good tips for managing different generations of people, and very kind of practical guidance on dealing with conflict and resistance to change and all sorts of. There's lots of different topics in the book. It's not a long read, but quite comprehensive. So yeah.
Well, thank you very much indeed, panel. Really appreciate that. And let's move on to the next question then, please, Charlotte.
Thank you, Nick. We've got a question from Hans in Utrecht, in the Netherlands. As a leader, how do I best handle conflict between my team members in the workplace?
Okay, Nandhakumar, start us off on conflict management.
Okay, so I think three things again that come to my mind. Of course, we can talk about a lot, but three things is: one is focus on the issue of the contention, not on the personalities of the team members involved. Second one is keep a mind. I mean, have a open mind towards approaching a win-to-win situation, and finally be open to a kind of what we call as a BATNA, that is the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. In my opinion, these are some three things. I'm sure the others in the panel will also add, but these are the three things that come to my mind at the first.
Thank you very much, Nandhakumar. Johann?
And Nandhakumar, you can hear Stephen Covey there coming through. But remember, he said win-win or no deal. I think what's also important is that people need to realize that we don't always have to agree. Yeah. Sometimes we can agree to disagree as long as we do it in a nice, mature manner. And then the group or the leader or whatever makes a decision, and we buy into that and we commit because we're part of this community or we're part of this team. Be open, be honest, and also, don't play the man, play the ball.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Patrick?
So I'd like to just play off what Johann was just sharing with us, because if you're going to have high performance teams from really talented people, you have to acknowledge that smart people will disagree about things fairly frequently, actually, if they're really committed, if they're really trying. And so as an Agile leader, it's important for you to have comfort helping them find their own way to their own resolutions together. They may not ultimately agree, but they can agree to disagree and then commit together to an approach that takes the team forward. That's really the only way to create a really high performance team in the long run. If people aren't ever conflicted, then quite frankly, they're probably not trying as hard as they might, or they don't feel safe sharing their true thoughts.
Right. And Priyank, last thoughts on this?
Brilliantly quoted by Patrick and my fellow panelists. So just in addition, like most of the time I experienced that was driven through the assumption. The problem was because of some assumptions taken. So one person is thinking in a differential way and the other person is thinking in a differential way, do not have a shared understanding. And what I do is I bring the assumptions out. I ask them to, create literally two Venn diagrams, like what is your view and, whatever you're thinking. So two circles. And then ask them, like, what are the things which you want to buy from the other circle at minimum, right? So to get started with, and then generally, if it is ego-driven conflict, it takes a little more time to, digest someone else's idea. But then most of the time, assumptions surface out if people write it, rather than they just don't talk about it. So, we request them generally to sort it out with this, and in my experiences. But then, as Patrick highlighted, they're good thing. They're not bad thing. Just need to learn how to handle it.
Yeah, absolutely right. I totally agree with that. Thank you very much indeed, panel. Charlotte, let's crack on and we'll take the next question, please.
Another question from Nick in Wokingham, UK. What would the panel recommend as a way for someone to gain leadership experience?
Patrick?
I would suggest that almost any opportunity in almost any environment is an opportunity for leadership. Look around you at the other stakeholders, look at the shared goals and opportunities that the group is trying to achieve, and ask yourself how you can help them operate in a group purpose together to achieve their ends. And by practicing thinking about the outcomes and thinking about how you empower the teams, it will help you start to practice the skills and the goals that will lead you toward effective leadership.
Okay, thank you. Priyank and then Etienne.
I would say start a company. You will learn a lot, isn't it? So, I think leadership, a lot of people think about dealing with people. In my opinion, it's about learning the finance, learning how the cash flow happens, and learning about how do you hire, and lot many other domains. It's not just about like, getting a project done. So in my opinion, just start a startup. And of course, you might not have a lot of cash to get started with. So that's the better option to get started with. So that's first opinion. The second one is definitely, leadership is, it comes with various form, right? Go for a hiking project and then see that how you can lead the people with that complex situation, giving them opinion, and suggestions, because everybody is carrying themselves. You don't actually carry somebody on your shoulder when you're doing hiking. But then how do you influence? How do you show them the right path is a great project. Simple step. The third suggestion is like, join some community effort, right? Where you will learn a lot from the people. Like I learned a lot from listening to people. And as highlighted earlier by Patrick, like, when you're working in any environment, the most important is how do you learn the right practices which people are exhibiting in front of you. So that's the three suggestions I have. The places, as you said. So there are the places which you can try out.
Thank you very much. Etienne?
I'm just going to say you don't need a job title, you don't need a position to be a leader. You can lead from anywhere. So in your team at work, lead by example. Encourage, help, show your colleagues that you support them. And if you do want to kind of take it to a next level, volunteer, community center, volunteer as coaching a soccer team, or just become a mentor. Help someone that you can give advice to, someone that is following in your footsteps. If you're new in an organization, you're new to the work environment, help someone who's still at school, but you can demonstrate leadership wherever you are.
Great advice, thank you. And Johann, last thoughts on this?
Let's make it practical. Look around you. There's things that's not going well, things that your group or your team or whatever is struggling with. Be a servant. Facilitate the change by example. Leadership is not about, as Etienne said, a title. It's about people who want to follow you because they like what you represent. They like what they see.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on just because I'm looking at the clock a little bit and thinking about the questions that we've got stacking up. If you're watching this and you'd like to submit a question, it's really easy to do. Just type it in the chat and we'll bring it into the live event for you. Charlotte, next question, please.
A question from Sean in Seattle, USA. As a leader, I found it hard to make those hard decisions. Are there any techniques that can help with this?
Okay, Patrick?
I would just suggest to you that hard decisions don't always come out right the first time. And so you need to practice your own level of forgiveness in the types of decisions that you make so that you make the best available decision with the information you have, and then you prepare to learn and prepare to adapt. So one of the things I would also encourage you to think through is, as you're considering a hard decision, think about how the feedback loops will give you information that help you course correct as you start to see the ramifications of your choices.
Okay, very good, thank you. And Priyank?
In addition to what just Patrick said, so we need to detach ourselves from emotions, and the decisions. So the emotions makes it hard, I would say, right? So you need to learn how, as a leader, this is not an answer, this is my experience. It was very difficult for me to, separate these two objects. First one was a decision, and second was emotion in that decision, right? So the hardship comes from emotion, not from the decision, in my opinion. So be emotionally prepared, and there are lots of good advice available on internet and plenty of courses. I learned it with hard, experiences. So hiring or maybe firing could be, firing would be maybe categorized as a hard decision, in my opinion. But then, how do you do that, and how do you detach yourself with the emotions involved? And as Patrick said, don't first of all lead yourself or your enterprise or your people to that situation. So course correct it. Don't have to fire somebody. You can improve all throughout the journey, giving small feedback and implementing feedback cycle. But then if it happens, I believe you have to detach yourself from the emotions, because that's good for everybody. It's for larger good, right? So as entrepreneurs, we have to take sometimes very hard decisions like that. Many others. But that's what my 2 cents for you, like, and team.
Yeah, really good advice. Thank you very much, Priyank. The one thing that I would say is that some decisions you can't sell, difficult decisions, all right? But you can explain them, and you can take your time to explain them and help others understand how it is and why it is that you've come to that conclusion. Now, in time, you may be right or you may be wrong, but at least you've taken the time to explain and be accountable for the decision that you've taken. All right, very good. We'll take one more question, please, if we can, before the focus topic. So let's take that next, please, Charlotte.
Nick, we've got a question from a live viewer, Rakesh. How do you measure success of a leader?
Okay, this is really interesting. So depends on your situation, I would say. If you're on the board and you've employed, somebody to be the CEO, you may take one view. If you're a contributor and you're looking up to the CEO, you may take another. Johann, go ahead, and then Priyank.
Ask the followers why they follow.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. That's very true and very insightful. Really interesting perspective. Thank you. Priyank?
I don't think that there's an answer, but a suggestion I would say, rather than, I don't think that what do you measure success of a leader. So, if you are looking from an enterprise perspective as a leader, and I run a company, it's all about growth, right? So how do you lead your enterprise to growth? And it's a very flat answer. So there's no great answer I have, but, if you look at the various ways enterprises in the community circulate their branding or information about their vision, if you conduct a 5 why analysis on that, eventually you will come to this answer that it's all about growth. So there are fancy things which everybody circulates, but it's all about growth. And in that, in my opinion, which is very critical element, how do you really handle your people with empathy? So there are 2 ways, right? One is, which is, you're not nice with people and you're not good with them, but then you have actually a lot of empathy for your people, so you're carrying them along, right? You're growing them. So in my opinion, as an entrepreneur, we need to grow people, and that could become a success factor as a leader.
Absolutely right. And I think, Priyank, you're spot on, and Johann, to kind of point us in the direction of the trend rather than the outcome. So quite often, especially in sports teams, either the manager or the captain, these kinds of individuals are exchanged when a team hits a difficult period. When the English cricket team forget how to throw and catch, which we do from time to time. My team does from time to time. It's been known. Okay. And the tendency is to, replace the leadership. Okay. And then you get into the period, oh, yes, it's marvelous. Everything's going well, for another few times. So it's all about trends necessarily rather than particular outcomes. So growth, totally agree with that. So thank you very much indeed. Well, look, let's change gears now a little bit. We're going to spend a little bit of time with Patrick. So I'm going to invite Patrick to join me for the focus topic. For those of you who are in Slido, just click on the focus topic tab, and then you can add your questions in to this section, which is really all about Agile leadership. Now, by its nature, leadership can be a challenging role, particularly as we've heard already, from transitioning an organization to become maybe more agile. Colleagues look to leaders to provide them with clear direction, confidence, reduce uncertainty, and so on. Patrick, in your experience, what are some of the key challenges that leaders have in encouraging their colleagues to adopt a more agile approach in their work?
Some of the organizational challenges that I see a lot in my clients begin with lack of understanding about what agility is really supposed to be about. Is this a set of practices? Is this a way of perspective, the way I like to describe the Agile mindset is it's simply acknowledging true things, that we don't know all of the things that we'd like to know. And that right now, at this moment in time, we know the least about the problem we're trying to solve we're ever going to know again. And so we want to do the best we can to try to understand our goals and objectives. But at the same time, we want to be able to prepare for adaptation and learning, and that's not a lack of due diligence. That's basically just acknowledging that we're not omniscient and that that's okay.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. A little earlier, one of the questions, prompted a comment about, be the servant, and servant leadership seems to be quite a feature of an agile philosophy, an agile mindset, an agile approach. Yes. Can you tell us a little bit more about servant leadership?
So, in alluding to some of the comments made by the panel, servant leadership is really about trusting your people, giving them the tools and the resources they need to be successful, and kind of getting out of the way and letting your teams execute, learn, adapt, and giving them opportunities for feedback, and then providing them the coaching and the supports that they need to help together find the way to the team's ends. Many, many years ago, when I first was being trained as a facilitator, they talked about operating in the group purpose. That your job as the facilitator is not to tell people what to do, but to help them find their way to their own ends together.
Right, and so in that sense, do you see that organisations who set out on the Agile journey some years ago are really focused on developing a maturity, a more organisational-wide maturity, or is Agile still kind of locked in the cellar with the safe inside the secret code that only a handful of people in the business really truly understand?
I think that organizations are starting to have to deal with the reality that volatility and uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity is here to stay. And if we weren't quite sure, the pandemic has certainly reinforced this message with no uncertain terms that we can only plan so much. And then the real world gets in the way, and we have to be able to prepare and adapt accordingly. So I think that for many organizations, agility is it's less a question of what you call it, but it's more a question of how adaptive are we to incomplete information, to various types of conditions that are changing, so that we can help lead our organizations forward as the world moves.
And is there, just to finish on, is there any kind of top tips that you would give people who are trying to lead in this period of high uncertainty, high volatility, as an agile leader? What would be your kind of top advice for them?
So in the United States, we have, the United States version of the global scouting movement, and they talk about what they call the EDGE method, explaining your goals, demonstrating what you want and need from people, guiding them and providing them the resources and supports they need, and then effectively enabling them to perform and getting out of the way and letting them work. Okay, if you believe in your people, if you trust your teams, right, they will bring more capability, more talent to the table. They will give you better results than you can get in your own head if you can enable them and allow them to do that. So I think it's really good advice, and I use it with almost all of my customers as well.
I think that's very true. You can be passionate, you can lead, you can be a visionary. But once you've kind of painted that picture, you then need the wisdom and the experience and the energy, really, of the team to be able to help you, turn that into, real innovation. That's brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Patrick. Really appreciate it.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
What we're going to do now, what we'll do now is we'll jump back to the panel and we'll focus on agile leadership now. So, Charlotte, may we have the first question, please?
You can, Nick. I think this is a question by Patrick. What reading do you recommend for business leaders looking to adopt agile approaches?
Johann?
I quite like the books from Jill Rosa. I think his surname is spelled Eroza. Very practical, not forcing a method down your neck.
Okay, thank you very much. Nandhakumar?
Okay, so the key in adopting agile approaches is obviously taking care of change. So there are a lot of literature available on agile, a lot of frameworks which can be looked at. But specifically, three things that come to my mind is practical people engagement by Patrick Mayfield, making sense of change management by Esther Cameron, Mike Green, and the Effective Change Manager's Handbook, which is a BOK of the Change Management Institute. These are in a way related to change management, and the key is with agile, it is more about enabling the change, and I'm certain that these would enable any business leaders who are looking to kind of implement.
Okay, thank you very much. Priyank, last thoughts on this one?
So I have a long list to suggest. I think they should keep reading one book at least every month. That's first suggestion. Until they keep learning, that will help. But then if they just want to keep the work in progress very limited, the first book would be by Don Renstein, who written the book, The Product Development Flow, the second generation product development flow. And then everything by Linda Rising, like including Fearless Change and many other books by her. Like, so everything from her is absolutely amazing. Very recently, Dave Snowden, the creator of Canvan Framework, is one of my favorite author now, because he talks sense, like, because you need to first of all understand your own system and then adapt the change. So exploring the system and the kind of complexity you are into, then you need to be logically applying a change. So these are the couple of recommendations I have. In addition to this, the last two would be, I worked very recently with and learned from them, Michael Speard and Michael Hemmen, and they're both the books which they have written. Like, one of the title is Agile Transformation by Michael Speard, and another one is by Michael Hemmen. So he talks about adaptive leadership in his book primarily. And the last one is everything from The Responsibility Company, Christopher Every, if you follow him by any chance. So these are like the top recommendation I have.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Well, we've got an exhaustive list there, just from one question. So great question, very well done. Thank you, panel. Let's move on. Charlotte, please.
Nick, we've had a couple of live questions come in. The first one is, do you think making the team feel comfortable is important as a leader?
Okay, do you think making the team feel comfortable is important as a leader? I would say it depends. There are times when the team needs to feel confident that they can explore a topic and discuss it and, debate it and, come up with different ideas. So creating the right environment is super important. Etienne?
Yeah, I think it is. I don't know about comfort so much as when people are comfortable, they tend to no longer contribute. When you're too comfortable, it's not a good thing. But I think what's more important is, do they feel safe? So do they feel that they can make changes in a safe environment? Can they take risks, and they know that you as a leader will be supporting them? So I think as a leader, it's important that people feel safe to make changes, not necessarily be comfortable.
It's a really good distinction. Thank you. I was searching in my mind for how to illustrate the difference between, kind of comfort and safety, if you like. So brilliantly put. Thank you very much indeed. So we're going to take the next question, Charlotte, if we can. A really good question, because, people need to be in the right kind of environment if they're going to make a strong contribution. So well asked and well answered. Thank you, Etienne.
We've got another question from a live viewer. How can you trust your team, and how can your team trust you?
Johann?
I'm going to quote Ernest Hemingway. The best way to find out if you can trust somebody is to trust them. So I constantly hear people saying, yes, but people must earn my trust. No, you must first show them that it's safe enough for them to actually stick their necks out. Yeah?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Priyank.
See, human psychology, as very correctly quoted by Johann, is like, to understand how communities operate and how human systems work. So trust is developed with a lot of effort. It takes time. It is driven by, principles and value systems and many other aspects involved in that journey when that is developed. So it's not an overnight thing, in my opinion. So you need to make effort to bring the things transparent to the people, like what are the circumstances in which they have to operate and what could be the outcome and what is the expectation out of them. So I generally use an instrument which is working all the time for me. It's called the house rule. Like when we do house parties, right, we have house rule. I have team's house rule, right? So there are very basic things which are listed and illustrated on the wall, and we know that these things, these small instruments actually create a trust environment where they know if we go left, what will happen? If we go right, what will happen? If we go straight, what will happen? So things like that can help a lot. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you very much. And Patrick?
So I really liked Priyank's suggestion about building a team charter with your team, helping them come to terms together with how they're going to be together and how they're going to interact together. One rather infamous aphorism is that showing up is 90% of life. And so in many cases, you build trust through presence. When you show up reliably and repeatedly for your team, when you are making yourself present and visible, and you choose to take on the hard blockers, the hard challenges to enable your teams to perform, to be successful, that will help them build trust in you. You have at some point to make a decision whether to trust them or not. And I really like Johann's comment. At some point, it's a decision. You have to be able to trust other people and then have them demonstrate whether or not that trust requires further supports, further enablement, or whether they are ultimately trustworthy.
I agree with that. I think it is a reciprocal, type situation. Priyank, do you want to jump back in and add to Patrick?
Yeah, I was just reminded, like wonderfully quoted by Patrick and Johann. Like, so there is a difference between trust, mistrust, and blind trust. By the way, everybody. So we need to define all three, not just one. So blind trust is all dangerous, right? Like most of the people want to be blindly trusted. Like whatever I'm doing is all correct. Don't ask me about it. So that's not right. What we want. So. So what I suggest is, like in finance, these terms are much easily explainable, right? Trust. And if you're a banker, you know what I'm talking, right? So, I suggest define what is trust and establish, as Patrick very correctly said. That's it.
Yeah, it's really, really, really good clarity, being brought to those things. There's a very beautiful sculpture, and I can't remember the name of the Renaissance artist who did it, but it's carved out of marble, and it's the figure of a female head, but the lady is wearing a veil. And the title of this particular sculpture is called An Allegory of Faith. And I think in my mind, the blind trust bit is like the faith bit. It's kind of conviction, but without proof. Okay. And then actually over time, you start to develop a view that says, okay, well, actually there may be some things that are challenging that default position that we might have in different circumstances. So thank you very much indeed. That's really great. Thank you, panel. Let's move on, Charlotte, if we may, and take the next question, please.
We've got a question from a live viewer. As leaders, how do you inspire your various teams?
All right. So this is a true from the heart thing. How do we go about inspiring people? Johann, kick us off with your personal experience.
By example. show them that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. If you say that you're going to enable them to come up with a solution, leave them the hell alone to do that.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, it's a really good approach. Patrick and then Priyank.
Inspiration has to come from vision first. Are we going someplace people willingly want to go? Are we taking them someplace they willingly want to take us? And then you have to create a functioning roadmap to help them see how they can get there and help them identify and drive that journey. Right. So if you establish a coherent vision for your team, and then you empower, you enable, and invite them to be part of finding the way to reach those goals, it makes it more likely that they're going to feel that they're being asked, not told, and that you're empowering them to help make that journey successful. So again, I really encourage organizations to look inside at all the talent and all the knowledge and all the perspective that your people have, and how do we underpin and support them in helping you achieve these goals.
Thank you very much, Priyank.
Very wonderfully quoted by Patrick. So stories and narratives are the two addition to explain your vision on top of what Patrick suggested. So that's my 2 cents. I think you need to know that what narrative you're running and how do you want to inspire people with that. That's one. Second is, obviously, what is your story? If you can involve people in that story, could be a great way. So you should have a vision in front of people, but that could be fueled by your story and narrative. That's my suggestion. And you should have a lot of respect for others' value systems as well in your storyline.
Thank you very much indeed. I think it's all about incremental moments of truth, along the journey. At the beginning of something new, and leaders are often called upon to inspire the team to start or to begin or to take that first step. And it's really important. There are also moments in the journey where it gets really, really tough, for people, and they need the inspiration to continue. That yes, it's hard, but we're in this together and everybody's working together. And then just occasionally, when you go down the route of trying to solve a problem and you've kind of figured out that actually you're at a dead end, then you need to have the courage and the conviction to be able to inspire people to say, okay, everybody, let's stop. Let's stop right now, okay? And retreat a little bit, and then we'll move forward again in a different direction. And sometimes leaders find that last situation actually really, really tricky because there's a loss of face, and there can be this sense of, oh, well, hang on a minute, I thought the vision or the mission was to go and end up in this particular destination, and now we're no longer going there. But it's a part of building that trust and future inspiration that you can actually say, all right, we're going to stop now because, and again, explain that decision, to your colleagues. Thank you very much. So I think we could probably fit 2 more questions in if we have the time and if we move at a bit of pace. So Charlotte, may we have the next question, please?
This is a great question, I think, to summarise today. Now, poor Pathak, can you name a leader you get inspired by?
Okay, so who has inspired us? Which leaders would we like to cite? Panel, who would like to jump in first with thinking about that? I think for me, where I'm going to begin with is I'm going to pick some philosophers. Now, I always get in trouble with this, all right, from my colleagues in India, because I'll quote a Greek philosopher, okay, and I'll think that's somebody that really had a good idea, good insight from, maybe 2,000 years ago or something like that. And then they come right back and say, well, hang on a minute, I can beat you there. I can quote somebody that's 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. So I'm going to go with the writings, really, I think, of probably Homer, because The storytelling in them is really interesting. The way in which his characters inspired and helped their crews and their teams and their adventures to actually happen are really, really good. So I'm going to pick Homer, first of all, kind of as mine. Panelists, which other leaders do you get inspired by? Priyank?
I think Gandhi is my inspiration. I mean, like the person who inspired me the most, who is no more living, but then is having a lot of ideologies which he preached to us. But one of the things which is I admire from him is about how he brought together a lot of leaders, and how he inspired to create the next line of leadership, which is very, very inspirational to me personally. He's my favorite in the list. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you very much. Johann, then Etienne.
Obviously Stephen Covey, because it's 7 Habits is something that I go through every year. But if you want to go classic, then I would choose a Roman emperor, Marcus Aurelius.
Interesting. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Etienne?
Yeah, alive and more modern. Richard Branson. Only because he's almost the exact opposite of me. I don't like taking chances. And I'd love to have a little more of that. Just go for it. And make
Absolutely.
it happen. I would love some of that. So yes.
All right, thank you very much. Patrick, and then Nandhakumar.
So to go a slightly different direction, I'm tremendously inspired by Greta Thunberg and the leadership she has shown in the global climate change movement, and in particular showing that anyone can be a leader when they find their voice and they speak honestly and forthrightly about the issues that we face and clear impacts of decisions that we make, and push hard for continued focus and continued action.
Thank you very much. Nandhakumar, do you have anyone in mind?
Yeah, I mean, more than leader, it's an author, Indian author, Anand Neelakandan. You get inspired the way you read his books. You get to learn how to get the perspective of the antagonist. So I would say it's one of the reasons reading which inspired me a lot to tackle a lot of real-time situations in life. Also by Devdutt Pathak. These are the 2 authors which are really inspiring.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, panel. That's really, really good. So one last question, but we will have to be super quick with it if we can. Charlotte, go ahead.
Question from a live viewer. If we don't have trust or an interesting story or an example, how can we inspire others?
Okay, I would say it's quite challenging to be able to do that. Johann?
By setting an example. There's always challenging situations around us, and how we as leaders choose to respond to those challenges will determine whether our team trusts us or not. Be the change.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Be the change. A good call to action, and that's where we're going to end it, because we're kind of running out of time a little bit, panel, but some really, really great questions. Thank you very much to everybody who's online submitting them. So what we'll do is just hear the closing remarks from everybody. Patrick, will come to you first, and then Johann.
So, Nick, I just want to take another moment to thank you for being part of the conversation, and for everyone who's watching and participating in the program. Remember that leadership really is fundamentally about painting clear visions, inspiration, and then providing support, resources, tools, enablement. If you want your teams to be successful, you have to empower them. And so take the time to understand your stakeholders, understand your teams, and think about how you can best help them help themselves to achieve the goals that you're looking to see.
Thanks, Patrick. Johann, and then Nandhakumar.
Nick, I think an important thing is we need to value people's ability and contribution that they can make. I'm just going to quickly read a quote from Richard de Philippa. It doesn't make sense to hire chess players and then treat them like chess pieces. It does not make sense to hire smart people and then having them to follow stupid rules.
That's really, really beautifully put. Thank you very much. Nandhakumar and then Priyank.
Yeah, so thanks all. I mean, it was a nice session, but as closing remarks, actually, I'd like to concentrate on two things, specifically since we are in the Agile leadership. One is servant leadership, and second is empathy. I think these are two key things that I would request all the viewers to kind of concentrate on. That should definitely. That's it from my side.
Thank you very much, Nandhakumar. It's so important to stress that empathy because that's where everything builds from. So thank you for bringing that in. Absolutely right and proper. Priyank and then Etienne.
So it was wonderful panel discussion. I learned a lot myself and I'm super excited. The energy has flown this side, my team. So I just want to share a quote, which represents the Agile leadership. I personally feel, and now I believe in fact, that everybody is good in their own capacity. We need to love people, right? We need to have a lot of empathy for them. They're doing best in their capacity. Maybe there are environments in which we need to, they unleash their talents. So we need to create such environments, in my opinion. So do good to people. That's what, because it is good to do good. That's a quotation I have from, Bhagavad Gita, the same book I recommended. And it's just like a greatest feeling in this planet, in my opinion.
That's absolutely right. Thank you very much, Etienne. And then Charlotte.
For me, I think the big thing as an Agile leader is to be responsive. Respond, and you can only respond by listening. And you can build consistency or you can build trust by being consistent. Respond consistently, listen consistently. If you don't listen, if you don't monitor what's happening around you, how are you going to respond? So, yeah, for me, it really is about listening to your team and showing your team that they can trust you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Charlotte, quite a packed and active set of producers that we've had online today, setting the questions and voting them up and changing the question order. Fast and furious.
Yes, we've had lots of live questions come in today. It's been tricky trying to control them. But yes, we do have many others that have been submitted during today's show and prior to today's show that have not been answered yet. So definitely a topic for the future, Nick. Thank you to all our panelists for such expert and fantastic answers.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you to you, Charlotte. Great job, everybody. Now, look, if our panel have inspired you and you're getting value from our content, then do leave a comment in the chat below and help spread the word by liking, subscribing and sharing the video that will be recorded and uploaded to YouTube a little bit later on today. Next Monday on the 13th of December at 8 a.m. GMT, we'll be exploring portfolio management. Is this really one of the dark arts in the project, programs and portfolio world? Or in fact, does regular focus and prioritization keep up momentum and value delivery in organizations? Later on in the same day at 1 p.m. GMT, we get into a meaningful discussion on privacy, as more of us are coming to resent having our data exploited. What are the trends that we need to be aware of as business professionals in that space? Subscribe to the show. We'll send you a personal summary of what's coming up and how you can join us here on the panel and level up your career with APMG. Thanks very much, everybody, and we'll see you soon.